Morning and hello to our international audience. Samsor from Bahar TV. I have a very special guest here today with us. Our guest is former CNN, former RT Russia Today news anchor, one of the bravest journalists around the world. Mr. Rex Sanchez is with us. Mr. Sanchez, thank you for coming to Bahar TV.
Thank you, Samsor. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure to be with you. I look forward to a conversation.
Thank you so much. I will just explain a little bit. Our TV is an international TV, worldwide, Afghans all the way from Australia to Afghanistan, Canada, Europe, everywhere. Millions of Afghans turn in and watch this program. We're trying to pivot into international audience. And if we become successful, you're going to be one of the founding fathers of our international. So we really appreciate it on behalf of the entire Afghan community worldwide. I want to extend my gratitude and appreciation to you.
It's an honor and a pleasure. The more we talk to each other, whether we agree or disagree, as long as we're dialoguing, we're making a more peaceful and a better and a smarter world.
That's it. That's the whole entire goal of our TV and your channel, which we will be talking about it soon, and the entire independent media everywhere in the world. Mr. Sanchez, in the beginning, I just want to know the Afghans worldwide, if they don't know you, so they can get familiar with you. If you can just tell us a little bit about your journalistic career, please.
I was born in Cuba, and my dad was poor. He lost his father when he was a little boy, and he had to go to work when he was just 8 years old. And eventually he came to America and he raised me and my brothers along with my mom. But because my dad went through that experience in Cuba, he learned at an early age that there's a certain level of abuse, colonialism, exploitation, oftentimes one nation over another. And because of that, and I think, when you're Cuban, you saw imperialism from two sides. You saw it from the Spanish, and you also saw it from the Americans. In the case of the Americans, it wasn't just the Americans. I mean, it was, the kind of the industrialists, the oligarchs, and the mafia. So he was so poor, and at 8 years old, when he lost his father, he had to go to work, and he had to raise his mom and his sister, shining shoes. So he was a simple man, a poor man, and I grew up poor because we didn't have any money when we came to America. But because of that, I always learned to fight for the little guy, and I always thought that truth is the most important capital that we can have. So I've spent my entire life following my dad Paco's mission for me, which was to always tell the truth and to always stand up for what's right, to always tell the truths that help the people who are not on the top but on the bottom, because it's the people on the top who usually control the narratives. So because of that, I've gotten to become one of the most watched and highly rated and, I guess, famous or infamous people in America, and now kind of internationally. And because of that, I've also been fired, lost my job, and been humiliated in many ways because powerful people don't like people who tell too many truths. So, I was the highest rated anchor at CNN, and I was fired for telling truths. I was one of the highest rated anchors at CNN, and I was fired for telling truths. So it doesn't matter because, I think I'm a survivor, and I go on, and I think we're at a point now, thank God, in many ways, where people like me are no longer weird, I mean, there's me, there's Colonel McGregor, there's Napolitano, there's Tucker, there's Daniel Davis, there's Mike Benz. There's so many of us now who are out there screaming the truth, and we don't have to work for CNN or the BBC or the New York Times or Le Monde or any of those other bullcrap, news outlets that really don't represent the truth. We used to think they did, but they really don't. So, I think in many ways, my career and where I am today is a personification of the hope that maybe we'll be able to communicate more effectively and tell more truths beginning today and moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. And I have been following your career from the CNN days to Russia Today, and eventually your independent channel that we can talk about. Um, you mentioned it yourself that you had actually one of the best shows on CNN, one of the highest rated anchor. And that's why it grabbed my attention because there was the people, corporate media, CNN narrative, and you're asking what a journalist is supposed to be asking, the kind of questions that are important to American people, American public, the viewers, so they can get a better idea of the news and events around the world. I mean, a lot of people would not give that up. You know, you said something, you did something, you challenged the power, you challenged the authority in a way. A lot of people, you know, for them, it's like, I got into CNN. This is what I'm going to stay on. You know, I'm going to move on to more primetime shows. What was it about you? And just to let you know, the people of Afghanistan love Cuba. We have a historical relationship with you, and me was born in Afghanistan. I was 10-year-old when we left Afghanistan. And we share that your experience. So, what was it about you that you were willing to give up your CNN job speaking against the authorities and the power?
Well, maybe it's because I grew up poor. You know, I never had much. You know, my parents never made more than like $11,000 a year combined. Um, so we grew up where I remember there were times when my parents didn't have enough to eat so they can feed us. So maybe it's because of that. I just didn't consider that materialist things mattered that much. Most of the people who work at CNN, who, when I got there, one of the first things I realized, both at CNN and NBC, were kind of elitists. You know, they're all from wealthy families in the Upper East Coast of New York or Boston, and they had a certain way of. They all went to Ivy League schools. I didn't have any of that. So in many ways, for me, it was very different. And maybe I should have cared more because they were paying me like $1 million a year. It's a lot of money. I mean,
It
that
is.
was. I mean, I was like, I think back and I go, wow. You know, I was just a young man at the time, but making that kind of money was everything. I mean, it was my wife and my. When I have 4 children, um, it was my ability to take care of my kids. So it was hard when they didn't only fire me, they humiliated me. They made sure that all the talk shows called me names and said that I was an anti-Semite and all kinds of horrible things. It was very, very painful. Not only that, but then they made sure that nobody else would hire me so that nobody else would touch me. You know, I was kind of an untouchable in many ways for a long time. So but to answer your question, why didn't I protect myself more? Why didn't I play the game? Why didn't I say and do what they wanted me to say? My dad. I my dad passed away last year, but
May God.
those of us who are simple people, and deep down, I'm just a simple guy. And those of us who are simple people, I think we believe in truth, and we believe that we have to fight for each other, and what's right is right. I mean, there's only one truth, right? I mean, you could look at a situation and you know you know when a little kid steals a cookie and you ask him what happened to the cookie and he says I don't know, you know he knows. it's like it's like US foreign policy. It's like a joke, and we all know. It's like keep happening, you know, whether it's our foreign policy, you know, whether it's Afghanistan or Yemen or Israel or Gaza or Iran or Syria or Libya or Ukraine or any of these places. It's like so obvious that we're involving ourselves in crap that we don't need to be involved in. And it's like the little kid with the cookie giving an answer, and you go, no, that doesn't make any sense. So if I'm going to get trouble for knowing that someone is lying and calling the lie, then so be it. maybe that's the way it needs to be.
Mr. Sanchez, also, we shouldn't forget about Cuba, also 60 year of senseless economic embargo. One of the neighbors of United States, so many cultural connection, but still, yes, that colonial mindset continues on in the U.S. foreign policy. And we will talk about that. I just want to get your sense of the corporate media environment. I mean, I look at, Fox News can't even talk about it. They live in a completely different bubble world, but CNN or even MSNBC, and I see actually NPR used to be one of my favorite, and they're going the same. Just talk bad about Russia, talk bad about China the entire time. I feel like, people like Anderson Cooper, Wolf, they're smart people. I'm like, they know what is going on, but they feel like it feels like they're just pretending. They're just pretending to keep people dumb, sell that colonial narrative, the corporate narrative. What do you think? It's just fame. That's what is not stopping them from telling the truth, or at least, inject some sense of truth within the story that, and I saw that in you, even though you were on CNN, you were asking the right question at the time. What do you think was going on with these folks? What is the U.S. corporate media environment like?
What I realized that when I was at CNN, listen, I like Wolf. I think he's a good guy. He was my neighbor recently when I was living in Potomac, Maryland. I'd go jogging in the morning and jog by him, and we'd say hi to each other, see each other at the cafe. And I think he's horrible. I think he's a horrible newscaster. I also think he is ethically somewhat challenged in many ways, because he doesn't do what you just said, which is stand up for the things that he should challenge. So that's why I think he's not a good broadcaster. On top of the fact that I just don't think he's all that talented. But same as Anderson. I mean, Anderson and I, we got along great, but he's not a man of conviction. He's just like weak, and he sits out there and reads things that I know he knows are wrong, but he does them anyway. So your question is, why do they do that? Well, first of all, it's self-preservation. To a certain extent, I said I was making $1 million. Anderson makes $20 million. Wolf makes about $12 million. Look, I mean, it's hard to walk away from that. It's hard when you make that kind of money to make a decision that you're going to start challenging the status quo when the status quo can say to you, bye-bye. You're never going to get a job and make that kind of money again, because they'll make sure you don't, because it's not CNN. It's like you said, Fox plays we don't like Muslims and we don't like gays and we don't like this. And as CNN says, okay, we're okay with gays and we'll defend Muslims and Hispanics and blacks and whatever. So they play these little games about these issues that are like token things that don't really matter. But when it comes to the big stuff, wars, the power of Israel, foreign policy, corruption in politics, they're exactly the same. Exactly the same. They find these little fiefdom areas where they can have little battles, but they're little battles that don't matter at the end of the conversation. What should matter is the fact that in the United States, if you're a politician, you are allowed to be bribed, and they all are. They are owned, they are bought and sold like prostitutes. Every single one of them, almost. There are a few maybe who don't, including the president, who gets hundreds of millions of dollars, not just this president, but others in the past. And that's how they get in those positions. Now that is what Anderson Cooper should be screaming about. That's what I was screaming about that got me fired. I mean, that's what Wolf should be screaming about. But they don't. And in many ways, it's because the power emanates from Washington. I'll never forget one day I was running a story on a very famous U.S. politician. I'll leave names out of it. He was running for president, and I found out something about him that I thought was going to compromise him. And I told my team, I said, we're going to do this story today, and we did it. Next day, I got a call from the president of CNN, and he had just been yelled at by somebody in Washington at CNN who was running the Washington operation, because CNN is run out of Washington. Even though my office was in Atlanta and New York, and most of the studios and all the news comes out of Atlanta and New York, it's really in Washington, because that's where some of the power brokers are. So somebody either at the White House or in this person's domain had reached out to somebody at CNN in Washington, called the president of CNN, who got yelled at, who then called me and yelled at me and threatened me because I was doing the right darn thing. And I'll never forget it. That's where I should have started to see the signs that were coming, because I was getting yelled at. Maybe at least once a month. I was getting called in and told, we don't like that story you did. And I was like, yeah, but it was a legitimate story. But so yeah, I think in the end, you either realize that you're following the line they want, or you're kind of bucking their trend. And those of us who buck the trend eventually get removed. And I was one of those.
Yeah.
Those guys don't.
That's true. That's so true. And more power to you for standing up for truth. And that's what journalists are supposed to be doing, not chasing money, not chasing rating, telling the truth to people. And American people, more than any people in the world, deserve it, because it's the most powerful country in the world. Any policy it makes, any foreign policy especially, it affects everyone on the planet. So before the
Guys
rise
like
of
you and me, you were making me think of something. Guys like you and me, and when I think of myself, when I think of my father, when I see a little kid in Gaza crying or killed, or in Afghanistan, or in any part of the world, Ukraine, I identify with them, because I'm just a little immigrant kid. I'm just, when I see pictures of myself, I look exactly like you probably looked, and we could have been brothers. I look just like the rest of the people who are from around the world, and somehow this is almost like a spiritual thing, and I don't mean to besmirch anybody, but I don't think when Anderson Cooper looks in the mirror, he in any way reflects on or identifies with a child in Gaza or a child in Afghanistan. And I also don't think that Wolf Blitzer does either. So I think that just comes with how you're made and where you come from. It's kind of in your heart and in your spirit. And if you bring that into your world as a journalism, into the world of journalism, you become kind of a unique journalist. And you don't have to be an immigrant to have it, but it helps to be an immigrant.
That's so true. Or it helps just to be a human being, and some degree of morality and ethics. Mr. Sanchez, before the rise of alternative or independent media, that you and I are part of it, one of the alternative media that I used to follow, at least to get a sense of what is going on in the world, was Russia Today and Al Jazeera English. Al Jazeera English, to some degree, it's still available. Russia Today, the most critical time, when the war in Ukraine starts, they ban Russia Today. Even the website, it's so difficult to access. It works, but it's constantly after getting so many stops. How was your experience in Russia Today? Because my thought was like, it was really offering a alternative perspective on world event, important perspective. How was your experience working there?
Like I told Tucker recently when he had me on his show, when I was on Russia Today, unlike my experience at CNN, unlike my experience at Fox, unlike my experience at NBC, I wrote my own show. I picked my own stories. I picked my own staff, and I delivered the show. And I wasn't told what questions to ask. And I had more freedom over my narrative and more independence as a journalist than I ever have working at any other site in the United States, which is why I'm in Moscow now doing shows again for through Russia Today, independently, but still through Russia Today, because I think it's important, given the scenario out there, for me to be able to do so. And I, to this day, anything I do associated with that network, no interference. I'm allowed to have opinions. One of the great things about, and one of the reasons I came here, and one of the reasons I was in Istanbul, and one of the reasons I was in Crimea, and now I'm going to be going over to Dubai, is because I want to have access to decision makers other than the people in the United States and in the West. And it's funny because I've been interviewing a lot of people who are leaders in this part of the world, especially Russian leaders. And, I have straightforward, easy conversations like you and I are having right now. And at first I can tell they still have a little bit of that Soviet apparatchik mentality where they want the questions ahead of time. What are you going to ask me? And I'm like, sir, I'm sorry, I'm a journalist. I can't give you my questions. I can give you my topics, of course. We have to be respectful. And I'm not going to, it'd be nice for you to know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to give you questions. And I should have the liberty to ask you anything. And they're going like, okay. And eventually, they trust. And, I'm getting conversations with Medinsky, the guy who's negotiating with Ukraine, Solyonov, the gentleman who's the Minister of Finance, to explain how Russia has weathered all these incredible sanctions, and Nadenia, the ambassador to the United Nations. And, these are really interesting people. People Americans shouldn't hear. Whether you like them or disagree with them or hate them, it's okay. But we should have conversations with them. It's amazing how the West just blocks them out. You don't even know what Putin sounds like. The only thing you know of Putin is jokes they make of him on Saturday night. That's wrong. It's not the kind of world we should live in. And that's what I'm trying to fight.
And you are doing that bravely, and we really appreciate it. We who value independent and strong voices, strong questioning. And I'm sharing on the screen your YouTube channel, Journalistically Speaking, and Truly Journalistically Speaking, with Rex Sanchez. I call upon all my Afghan viewers, please go to YouTube, subscribe to this channel, and you will see the intellectual conversation that takes place here on this channel. Nowhere you will find that, not on CNN, not on Fox, not on MSNBC, not on France 24. This is where the real intellectual and journalistic conversation takes place. So I call upon all my Afghan viewers to please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Mr. Sanchez, we're going to get into some of the politics and some of the political issues. Joe Biden, I think one of the worst presidents in the American history. Especially towards the end, he was being called Genocide Joe for the support and complicity and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Definitely a narrative that U.S. media will not speak about, that it was the NATO expansion that caused the war in Ukraine. They just won't always have that simplistic view of, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. I don't even call it two-dimensional. It's a single-dimensional, linear. Bad, good, we good, they bad. But Donald Trump, somehow, I don't know, he's a kind of salesman. He can sell anything on any given day. We can expect him to say anything. But he was running on a platform that he is going to stop the war in Ukraine. The war wouldn't have started there. At least we got like a ceasefire in Gaza during his ceremony. Do you think, it's more, it feels like, it's not, it is now Trump's genocide. It is now Trump's war in Ukraine. Not only that, he topped it with the war with Iran also. Uh, what do you think? Where is President Trump going? Is he surrounded by neoconservatives? And there's a saying, no matter who you vote for, you end up with John McCain and Lindsey Graham. Is that what we are experiencing right now?
Fortunately, I think we're either there or heading in that direction. It really saddens me. I thought maybe Donald Trump was crazy enough to change things because I never considered him a smart man. I think he's dumber than a bag of rocks. He's never read a book. He has no intellect. He has no conception of history, no conception of philosophy or geology or geography or anything. All he's ever done is we inherited $400 million from his father and turned it into a couple $1 billion, which is really not that much when you really do the the math on that. Nonetheless, give him credit, I guess, for some of the things that he has done. But I just really believed, I guess, maybe because of what, like you said, what we had in Joe Biden was, God bless him, practically a corpse. I mean, he was almost dead. There was nothing going on. So that meant that the folks in the State Department and the CIA, and the powers that be in the war machine, and the big, industrialists were running the country. And they basically told him, here, sign here, and he would do whatever they wanted. So that was so bad. And of course, the real president of the United States is Bibi Netanyahu. And the president of the United States was Bibi Netanyahu during Biden. And the president of the United States is Bibi Netanyahu right now. Mm-hmm. So that's really sad. In fact, I would venture to say, from what I've seen just in the last couple of weeks, that Donald Trump is less able to hide the fact that Bibi runs the US than Biden did, and Obama did, and Clinton did. I think because of the $500 million, arguably, according to the gray zone, that Donald Trump got from the Adelsons, he's really in the tank for Israel. It's tough to say, and it hurts, but so Israel's plan was Afghanistan and Iraq and Yemen and Syria and Libya and Lebanon, and then finally Iran. Well, now they get to do Iran, and I don't think that's over yet. I think he's going to keep pushing for it until he gets it, and unfortunately, I think Trump will likely allow him to have it. The other part of what's wrong with Trump is that you're right. He seems to be folding to the neocons and the war profiteers. And that's troubling as well. So yes, we're back where we started. We thought, it almost seems like in my lifetime, maybe Carter a little bit, Obama, no, Bush, forget it. Clinton tried but failed. I think the only US president in my lifetime, and that's when I was just a tiny little kid, who actually bucked the system was JFK, and the system shot him in the head and removed him. So that's the reality of the world we live in the United States right now, and it's reason to cheer for BRICS and the global South community, because somebody has to. I love the United States. I love my country. I'm not against the United States. I'm not against the people of the United States. But the system has become so horribly corrupt that it stands for things that are really benign, if not even evil in many ways.
That's so true. That's so true. We all love the United States. We want good policies internally but we feel frustrated because the real American people's voice has been suppressed, and somehow the entire system is run by the corporate war machines, and it's the people that are the daily life is becoming worse and worse and worse. The middle class is shrinking. Yet, if we speak against these bad policies, somehow we are labeled as pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, or anti-American or something. But that's why we come in as independent media to guide this. Since you mentioned Bibi Netanyahu, I know every time he comes to the U.S., it's like the emperor visiting its colony, whether it's 57 standing ovation in Congress or both sides, lining up. Who can better say, hey, I am better supporter of Bibi Netanyahu and than others. Just quickly to take your view on it, it's coincidentally when he was here this week, at the same time, the Justice Department all of a sudden announces Epstein file closed. There's nothing to see here. There is no list of clients or something. What do you think? Coincident, or it has to do something with it?
I don't know. I was just doing my research this morning because, I'm like you. I'm kind of a news nerd. So I woke up this morning and I was trying to relax because I've got a cold, which you can probably tell. My wife said, just watch a boring movie. And it's like, I can't. So, pardon me. I found out this morning that an independent group just studied the video. The only video they released, that one that was missing like the minute, and they looked at it and they put it through a microscope and, whatever forensic things they do with those things, smarter people than us. And they found out that it had been doctored. So
Wow.
they haven't released anything. And the one thing they released, I just found out, and I was going to mention this. I was planning to use this on my newscast on Monday, that video has been doctored. So everything has been doctored. How is it possible that a man who's the most famous criminal in the world, who was tied to to kings, royalty, presidents, prime ministers, billionaires, the Mossad, suddenly disappears one night? Nobody has video. Nobody knows what happened. The guards were replaced at the time that he did it. The one report that was listed apparently was fabricated, according to a judge. Another video that was supposed to be taken, they accidentally erased. And now we find out, well, the one video we used had a lapse in it because it was a video from 1999. What? This is you can't make this up. It's like, it's almost stupidly, it's like, we're back to the little kid, your son or my daughter, when they're little and you catch them doing something they shouldn't do, and they keep giving all these excuses and you want to just laugh and hug them. This is like crazy. It's a stupid lie. And then to have the president of the United States say, nobody cares about this? No, Mr. President, that's the reason you got elected. You said you were going to be transparent. You said you were going to create a different kind of America, one where lies were not accepted, where transparency ruled, where we wouldn't do foreign wars forever and engage everywhere. You said all these things were going to change. This is the manifestation, the symbolism of what's wrong with your administration. The fact that you're now saying everything that's the opposite of what you and your team said they were going to do. You said the one thing we'll do when we get to office is we're going to make sure we release everything regarding Epstein. And now it's just the opposite. Oh no, he just killed himself. There's nothing to see here. And stop asking questions. What's wrong with you for asking that question?
No. That's
You're right.
Video of Trump talking about that. That's heart-wrenching. Mr. Sanchez, I have two other questions. I know we have a limited time. I want to talk about Zoran Mamdani and Afghanistan. I see, here's this. First of all, it's amazing to see, the anti-Muslim and Islamophobic propaganda that's been going on since September 11 and before that too. There was a lot before that. To just after the horrific terrorist attack of 9/11, to see 24 years later, there is a Muslim, whether he's practicing or no, he's identified as a Muslim, Zoran Mamdani, He brings down one of the most powerful dynasty in American politics, the Comos. CNN, New York, these people pretty much owned, the media and politics. But here's a kid, comes from nowhere, and we see left and right equally attacking him. They both just fear this 33-year-old person so much. Do you see any kind of like chances of like the real liberals or the leftists or progressive people giving him the vote, and the U.S. corporate candidate would sit by and watch him? I see it, Fox and CNN attacking him equally. So there must be something this guy is doing right. What do you take on it?
Who cares what Fox and CNN are doing? Because Fox and CNN get maybe 100,000 people to watch them a day. And most of those people are sitting in the wheelchairs and they're watching for 24 hours, and half the time they're asleep or the TV is like turned off. So it's not an important base, all things considered. What is an important base is the youth of America. And there was just a poll that was just done recently where they asked people, especially young people, the numbers were amazing. For the first time in America, Americans in this poll showed that they favor Palestinians over Israelis, favor the Palestinian point of view over the Israeli point of view. By far, never been seen anything like this. There is a bubbling up, if you will, that's happening in America. It's happening with young people, Democrat and Republican. It's happening among Republicans, even older Republicans, because there's this anti-Israel bent that's taking place right now, led by people who are, and it's not anti-Jewish, by the way, just in case there's somebody out there who's going to say, oh, I heard Rick Sanchez criticize. It's nothing to do with being Jewish. It has to do with criticizing the foreign policy of a country. I don't care if that country's called Israel or called, Bechuana land or Google Mama land. It doesn't matter. Fact of the matter is, if a country is killing children, shooting them in the head, and that's not an accident. You can't accidentally shoot a child in the head with a sniper rifle, okay? Shooting aid workers, and some 400,000 people are missing in a certain area. When you say there's only 30,000 members of Hamas and those are the people you're trying to get, well, what the hell, what are the other 170,000 then? So these are obvious things that are being seen by young people in America, and they're turning. And those are the people who got behind him and will likely make him the next mayor of New York. And the other thing about him, which makes his story unique, is he's the only one, forget the whole Muslim thing, throw that away. He's the only one who actually talked about the needs of the people who live in New York. When they asked him about foreign policy, he said, well, look, I'll tell you a little bit about foreign policy, but I don't care about foreign policy as much as I do about fixing the roads in New York and making sure the poor people in New York get food. That's what leaders need to do. That's the problem with America right now. Why are we in Ukraine when, like you said, inflation is up and wages are down for Americans in Kansas? Why are we bombing Iran when Iran has never done anything to Americans? Nothing. And those people who live in Kansas and Illinois and Wisconsin end up paying the price for those stupid wars that some small number of Americans get rich on. So we need more people like him, to step up and fight for Americans, which he did, which is one of the reasons he was elected. And the other reason he was elected is there's a trend in America right now that's turning against the old power brokers, which is the Zionist-ruled war profiteers. Hopefully it'll last.
That's journalistic speaking, Rick Sanchez, ladies and gentlemen, for you. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. The last question, a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, our dear beloved Afghanistan. We love it. We call it Mother Afghanistan. And with an Afghan culture, a country, your culture, your roots, it's in you for the rest of your life, and our children that are even born in America. If I ever get a chance and opportunity to come over to your show, I'm sure I can speak more about the issues of Afghanistan. But the simplistic view that was always, through corporate media, especially at the time of 9/11, was given to American taxpayer who paid $2.3 trillion waste on a 20-year genocidal war in Afghanistan. Yes, it was genocidal because if we go by the standard of Gaza, 50,000 a year, 1 million Afghans died in 20 years. That is 50,000 a year for apparently no reason. And trillions of dollars wasted there. The only narrative ever was given to American people was, oh, Soviets were there and we were supporting Mujahideen. Mujahideen means somebody who does jihad, actually, a jihadi. Ronald Reagan once called them, the greatest freedom fighters of all time, because they were at that time fighting Soviets. Then comes here another bad guys, Taliban. U.S. goes there, start bombing, killing, even though the guy that they were after, it was found in an ally country that took another billions of American taxpayer, Pakistan. So nobody ever answered why those million Afghans were killed. 4 years ago, Trump himself negotiated an agreement for American troops to exit. It was signed under Trump's first presidency. Biden, like making everything worse, of course, made the exit from Afghanistan worse. But since 2001, August 15, 2021, when U.S. Troops left, it's for the first time in 50 years that Afghanistan have a comparative peace. There's no active combat there. There's no million Afghans dying anymore. Actually, no Afghans are dying. Yet, United States have sanctions on Afghanistan. A banking system is frozen. The reserve funds are frozen in New York. But at least people have relative peace. And this week, it might be news to you, the country that you are in, Russia, they actually formally became the first country to formally recognize Taliban's government as the legitimate government in Afghanistan. And this is not the first time. Russia has been relatively Afghanistan's neighbor. In year 1919, when Afghanistan got its independence from the British colonials, Russia at that time during Vladimir Lenin was the first country to recognize that. So just taking your view on when you were in CNN, the corporate media, although it's becoming less and less relevant, like you mentioned that. What is your view of what is going on in Afghanistan, and does Trump or the world have any kind of solution for the Afghan issue?
Afghanistan was a lie from the very beginning. And I think it was based in many ways on almost a ignorance that Americans unfortunately have had for a long time. It was ignorance when, even in the Iran situation during Jimmy Carter's era, when they took the embassy, Americans hardly had anyone in the embassy who spoke Farsi. So they were planning the embassy takeover right in front of them, and they didn't know. I still hear American, even some of my friends who've served in Afghanistan or served in Iraq, and they come back and they know nothing about Iraq. Iraq. It's not Iraq. It's called Iraq. At least pronounce the damn name right. It's just this. It bothers me that there's such a lack of respect for the culture, the people, the language. And I remember when I was at NBC at the very beginning of the war in Afghanistan, and I immediately started seeing that there were stories about people there who were being killed, people in Afghanistan who were being put on trucks, and they were gathered because somebody would snitch on them. And they weren't terrorists. They were no more terrorists than you and me. But there apparently was some tribal situations like there are in all countries and all neighborhoods. And the US would hear a rumor about someone, and they'd collect 300, 400, 500 people, and they'd put them in a train car. And I guess because of the heat, sometimes they'd forget and they all would die there. And I remember reading stories like that and thinking, oh my God, how horrible, how disrespectful.
Yeah, it's and among Afghans, that story is a famous story. It's called Desert of Laili, Dasht Laili, one of the biggest massacres and one of the biggest human tragedy.
Genocide. I mean, that sounds almost like Holocaust kind of material. So it started that way, and then it went on for 20 years. And in those 20 years, while we were supposedly in a war in Afghanistan, the news media didn't even cover it. You couldn't, sometimes 30 seconds. But then, at the end, because they could use it politically, the only part of that 20 years in Afghanistan, which was news in America, was the last week. The last week. So they could say, oh, look, Biden, the exit was wrong. The exit was wrong. The whole damn thing was wrong. It's almost like looking at a football game, but only recognizing the last 10 seconds and not the whole game. It's just silly that we treated it that way. But I think the only reason that Afghanistan lasted 20 years was because there were people making a lot of money off of the war. And it's you know, it's a horrible thing. It's such an incredible country with such incredible people, not to mention just really beautiful people. I mean, physically and emotionally and personality wise and intellect wise, with a great history and a prolific people who've been through so much, because it's like Cuba in many ways, you know? There are certain countries, Afghanistan, your country and my country are like that. I remember I was working on a novel once with some friends about Cuba, and it was like, I think we said, it was a line where, to the Spanish, we were slaves, or to the Spanish, we were prostitutes, to the Americans, we were slaves, to the mafia, there's always another group coming trying to tame you or take you over because of where you are or what you stand for. I don't know. But that's kind of been Afghanistan's story. And hopefully now, you know, I love the fact that Russia has done what it's done. Acceptance, whether the government is perfect or not, I don't know. But I'll tell you this, you become more perfect and less imperfect by having dialogue and conversation.
Exactly.
And the fact that Russia's reaching out and saying, hey, let's create a relationship. Maybe through that relationship, we'll learn from each other and we'll build. That's what countries should do. And it's mindless and almost stupid for my country to go around the world treating Cuba and Afghanistan and others like they're little kids who don't deserve to have a seat at the table. They do have a seat at the table, and they should be respected. And I'm glad that Russia's doing it, and hopefully the US will get to that point as well.
Brave, honest, unique journalist, author, Rex Sanchez, ladies and gentlemen. And I should say this, growing up in Afghanistan, one of the most famous songs that was played on TV all the time, we're going to play it on our program later on, was a Cuban song. I don't know if I can sing it correctly or no. Guantanamera Wakira. Very famous. Every Afghan is familiar with it, and we're going to play it on our program. Sanchez, thank you so much.
You know, it's funny. It leads into what you and I have been talking about today, because the most famous line in that song is "Yo soy un hombre sincero." It basically says, I'm just a poor guy from the country. I maybe don't know anything, but I know the difference between right and wrong. Juan Talamera. That's what we've been talking about in many ways. So I'm glad you mentioned the song.
Thank you so much, Sanchez. Appreciate this.
God
And
bless.
see you again sometime in the future.
Dale.
Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
Ladies and
And thank you for
gentlemen,
letting me share my thoughts.
international journalist, author Rex Sanchez with us. And we appreciate it. And I again call upon all Africans to go to YouTube, Journalistically Speaking with Rex Sanchez. Subscribe to it and share it on the screen again. Thank you, Rick.
I'd like to return the favor and have you on sometime on my show.
Definitely. It'll be an honor, and we'll talk about all topics.
That'd be great. Look forward to it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
God bless.
Bye.
بهار تلویزیون د یووالي او پیوستون رښتینی غږ